Hi, welcome to another program. This week we want to talk about the corona and the path that Turkey chooses to combat with or against coronavirus threat. Now, in order to look at this, we need to look at the examples of what's going on in the world. United States is having a big pressure on that. It seems that they have great numbers, exceeding at this moment 500,000. And we see also in Europe there is a tendency, the daily number of cases in Italy and Spain are coming down, whereas in UK, France, and now in Turkey, the number of cases, daily cases, are increasing day by day. And we want to now, the first case in Turkey has jumped or came up like early March 2020, and now it has been around a month, and now we have most of the data and the strategies that we are now seeing how Turkey has approached this pandemic. And now we want to talk about this, why Turkey has chosen this path, and what are the reasons underneath, and why, because it's important to know what Turkey has chosen, so that we can also project what is expecting us ahead in Turkey. That's why we can also talk about the public health, including the economic recovery or possible economic recovery in Turkey, how it's going to happen. So without any further delay, let's start. Now in Turkey, we know the first cases came up during the early days of March. Most of the cases came from either from Europe or from Saudi Arabia, especially due to the pilgrim, and then it started jumping. The number of daily cases in Turkey started jumping. At first, when this has came up in Wuhan, China, we have seen that the total number as of today is 85,000, or 84,000 in China, if you want to believe. But and there are like 3,000 deaths in China. Now, Turkey thought that if it is the case in China, at that moment it was 70,000. Or sorry, 80,000 in China, or near 80,000. If it is the case in China, and with a 1.3 billion, we are 84 million, we should be having a much more less number of cases in Turkey. Also, we have a good health system, and we can have a fight with this, and we don't need to, prevent the economic recovery that started to take place after 2016 coup attempt. As you know, in 2016 June, there was a attempt of coup in Turkey, and after that the economy had started to collapse. We started seeing a recovery in the economy after the second quarter of 2019, and we believe that also the government doesn't want to prevent this economic recovery by empowering some quarantine precautions that would be applied for the airports or for the border, for the transportation and logistic activities, which would, of course, have a negative effect in the economic recovery. That's why Turkey chose to delay these kind of measures to the last minute. Now, what has happened then? We know that since January, the 1st of January 2020, up until now, Turkey has lost, up until the early March, or up until now, let's say, Turkey has lost almost 14% in the value of currency. It was 5.8 lira, $1 is 5.8 Turkish lira, it's now 6.7. So it's around 14% that has been devalued. And considering this, Turkey, as I said, has thought that at first we can fight, or we can have this combat much more, having much more negative effect on the economy and on the public health. And they have seen also some countries, like especially in Europe, United Kingdom, also United States, and also Netherlands have chosen this path. Now the problem and there is they realized this, they could not able to stop it. And Turkey was lucky, let's say, because Turkey really started to see all these number of daily cases increasing by mid or 20th of March, especially. But in Europe, we have seen this couple of weeks before that. So Turkey understood very quickly that this cannot be really done in a way that they have thought at first place. And then Turkey started changing its strategy starting by 25th of March. So how did they approach? The government thought that, okay, we can't stop the economy because we don't have the fund. What we need to do is minimize the workforce and let the others stay at home. Government could not be able to stop the workforce, not because they do not have only the desire, but they don't have the fund to support whole country. Now, since it is the case, this approach became a new strategy for Turkey up until last weekend, by 10th of April, when the government realized that there are two things majorly wrong with this, but they can't do anything about this. First is about the people. Unfortunately, Turkish people did not really follow the rules. Most of the young people, including some also elderly people, they were outside and they really neglected this. There are two reasons for that. One, about the character, they get bored, they don't want to stay at home. 5 minutes, 10 minutes they say, but sometimes 5 minutes, 10 minutes became like an hour. Secondly, and which was more important now, this is becoming an issue between the public and the government, is the economy. Because people need to work. And there are many people in Turkey that they have to earn a salary for the month, and then they have to spend that whole salary for the coming month. This is how it goes. There are not so many people that can survive their life standards, at least for a couple of months, without being working for work. That's the main issue about Turkey, and Turkish public is now getting or is already disappointed, if not maybe I would say annoyed about that they have been asked to choose between their health and their life standards. And this is really getting annoying for public while they see that there is no reserves that the government or the state can support the people in that regard. Especially they see other states are, I will say, supporting their citizens by giving them a resource of maybe $1,000 US or 1,000 euro, $200, $300 or $400 or whatever it is. But the Turkish state is asking the citizens to help them through a nation solidarity, I will say, donation, which is puts a great question mark in the people's mind. That's why there is a great problem now ongoing. At this moment, everybody is concentrated on this, but this is really a question mark that now everybody is asking why we need to donate some, let's say, funds while the other states are giving money to their citizens to protect their health. That is a question which is going to be especially an issue during the elections 2023. Now, another thing that we need to also remember that there is an important issue where the AKP, the government, or the Erdogan's party, President Erdogan's party, policymakers are thinking is this. After 2016 coup attempt, the economy or the indicators of the economy were getting lowered. We lost power, strength, economic strength, which caused a great number of votes to Erdogan's party in the elections. especially they lost Ankara and Istanbul due to that reason. Now, the AKP policymakers, of course, are behind their thoughts, are only thinking about this at this moment. How we can sustain all the economic activities in country while reserving the same level of support from its constituents. Now, that's a very hard question to answer for the government or the party policymakers, and there is no easy way for them, and they know it. That's why we strongly believe that they are going to take more and even more risky decisions about the economy or the recovery program. Now, there is a couple of things that the government is doing wrong. First of all the hospitals are now under the new regulations, which causes great problems for the existing patients, let's say diabetes or chemotherapy actions, or other people that needs to be treated by the other disciplines or the other doctors. This is the first thing that the government has done wrong. Secondly, what government is doing wrong is about these donation programs. There are two things wrong about this. One, the opposing parties, especially Istanbul and Ankara, were trying to collect donations from the public in order to help to the poor people. Now, this has been stopped by the government due to the reasons that if the other parties or the municipalities will start these kind of donations, it will not be controlled by the government, and there are some other bad intended parties like HDP, they say that, who are very close to PKK, the terrorist organization, which would lead them to have the support of the people. Now, there is one thing wrong about this, is this: while during the I will say elections, this has been done. Nobody has stopped this. Now you are saying that this shouldn't be done at this moment, so the support of the people will not be swung from the state to the bad intended people or the terror groups. Now, at this moment, all these things, yes, I agree that the government should be in control of all these things, but stopping all these things and not reaching to the most of the extent of the public will be a problem for the government. Government should work closely with the municipalities, but should not stop them. This is the first thing about this wrong doing of government. The second, what they are doing wrong, is especially about the donation programs of, or I will call, national solidarity donation program. This program was supposed to provide a cash flow to the people who needs. But what we are looking at is they are providing the cash to the companies, and the government thinks that whenever it was given by the people to the government and then the government to the companies will protect their workforce, which is going to lessen the burden on the government's shoulders. This is absolutely wrong. The governments, the companies in Turkey will neglect this. They will only consider themselves, because if you leave, you can make the others leave. It's always the idea in Turkey. If you don't take legislation steps, such as, 3 months is not enough, a year, or up until this pandemic ends, or in a way that state agrees or endorse, or some kind of much more legislations, no one can declare bankruptcy or can lay a number of people from their own companies, and so on and so forth. If the companies is going to do that, then they have to agree that they are going to be taken over by the government and they will not be even given, so on and so forth. And this is how it's going to be. But they are doing this wrong. The money should be given by the state to the people. It can be done in two ways. One of them is the we have around 20 million houses, I would say, households in Turkey, and to each household a number of a certain amount of, let's say, a Turkish lira can be spared based on the number of people living in it, the married, not married, with kids, no kids, and so on and so forth. All these things can be very much and very quickly can be justified, the amount, and it can be declared. Or if not, to each Turkish identity number, you can just put a X amount, fair to everybody, and this amount can be spared for their expenses. But government is not choosing this. Government is choosing that we should not have, or we should have less burden. Why? Because it shows that also the government has no really resource or with this combat, economic resource with this combat. That's why we believe that the strategy, keep the workforce as much as possible and put the others at home, will be implemented very long time in Turkey, I believe up until the end of this pandemic globally. Even vaccination will be found, it needs to be produced, and then most of the people in Turkey should be vaccinated so that this pandemic will end. So it will take great time. Therefore, this economic recovery will be really hard. There is also one thing that I would like to remind you. The World Trade Organization considers that the best scenario for global trade will be reduced by 12 to 13%, whereas the worst scenario shows 32% of reduction, or the global economic trades will be shrunk by. And Turkey, of course, is much more higher than the midpoint here. And that's why the global economy will be affected negatively. Yes, the price of oil and gas is reducing. Yes, but Turkey has to buy most of its, especially natural gas for households. This is not going to decrease so much. Turkey cannot sell now very much or very much of its services in tourism or also in manufacturing, other areas, to other countries, which is going to decrease our expenses. Also, moreover, the GDP is calculated with the spendings that the government is doing or the private companies are doing. And since I will say early March or mid-March, this is coming less and less every day, if not to a half point. So once you are considering all these things, I will say maybe 15 to 20% of GDP will be lost this year only. That's unless a vaccine is found. That's by end of this year. This is only my prediction, of course. And the World Trade Organizations and others, IMF is considering maybe 3% to 5% loss, because they are considering that even though this pandemic at this moment continues at the high peak level, it will go down. And when it goes down, the governments will let most of the workforce to resume working. That might be true, but I am not very sure that it will be really efficient and it will be really long-term period of production or manufacturing for the industries, so that the economic recovery will be as much as intended or projected. Because this illness is really either it's very hot season or cold season, it doesn't recognize any borders. It just jump from one host to another host or people to people very quickly. So really, I don't believe that it will be a good projection to consider that. We will see, but we do believe that the Turkish economy will be affected negatively. The public health will be affected negatively with this approach. And Turkey has to print money, whatever the reason is, inflation, the others should be all considered later on. At first, the people. The minimum workforce should be working. I don't say it's a very bad idea, but what I am saying that we shouldn't really push the people to work. We should really print the money and give them, and really minimize the number of people working for that. The government should have to work closely with the municipalities in order to distribute those aids or collect the donations by people. And we also believe that the AKP, or the President Erdogan's party AKP, is considering all these things after, especially what has happened during 2000, after 2016 coup attempt, how they lost the votes or the constituents to other parties, and they really will take all the risks, we believe, before this year ends, which is going to likely to make them major mistakes about the economic recovery in future. If you like this video, there is a like button underneath this screen. Please press on it. And also, if you subscribe here to our channel, you're the first one to hear and watch our videos. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Be safe. See you.